Next, let's talk about some perspectives on emotion. You likely never received any kind of formal instruction on expressing emotions. We generally learn how to express our emotions through observation, trial, and error, rather than explicit guidance, though we may receive that explicit guidance occasionally. And being able to express our emotions and to understand the expression of other people's emotions can help us to increase our interpersonal bonds. And that brings us to the concept of attachment theory. You might have heard of attachment theory in your psychology classes, but this theory states that it is in our nature as newborns to create social bonds with our primary caretakers. Early humans who were more successful at attachment were much more likely to survive and reproduce. And people generally develop one of three attachment styles. The first attachment style is secure attachment. This attachment style is developed when there is a positive relationship with the caregivers. So the caregivers have a positive and caring relationship with each other and with us as individuals. And people who have a secure attachment tend to be more effective at managing their emotions. They tend to be fairly comfortable with intimacy, feel like they can depend on others when needed, have few self-doubts, and are less likely to experience intense negative emotions. And all of that comes from this really positive relationship that we have with our caregivers from the very beginning. If we develop an avoidant attachment, this often comes from a lack of bonding with a caregiver. So that positive relationship just doesn't exist in the same way. People who are avoidant attachment tend to be reluctant to depend on others and report a discomfort with closeness. They often quickly develop feelings of love for others, but lose the intensity of those feelings just as quickly. They tend to not view love as being long-lasting or enduring and often fear intimacy with others, all because they did not create a strong and positive bond with their caregivers. And finally, there's anxious attachment. Anxious attachment happens when the primary caregivers were not dependable or otherwise inconsistent. So the caregivers might have alternated between being caring and nurturing and being neglecting and harming to the individual. People with anxious attachment tend to be emotionally volatile, and they report a desire for closeness, but anxieties about being abandoned. People with anxious attachment regularly experience self-doubt, and they often blame their lack of love on others' unwillingness to commit rather than their own anxiety about being left. These individuals are likely to experience intense negative emotions such as anxiety and anger. And the process of attachment leads us to experience some of our first intense emotions, such as love, trust, joy, anxiety, and anger. And we learn to associate these emotions with these closely bonded relationships. So the emotions that we feel within these relationships can really dictate a lot about our lives and the future relationships that we develop over the course of our lives.